Alright, hello everybody. My name is Tiram, and today we are going to be talking about my thoughts and predictions for the upcoming new expansion for Final Fantasy for 6.0. This is mostly in regards to the upcoming new jobs, the new changes, and maybe even some balancing, since the special announcement stream is this upcoming Friday. I wanted to go ahead and get my predictions out ahead of time, just to kind of give everybody a feel of what I personally think we'll see in the game, as well as things that we may see changes in that regard. So maybe later on we'll make another video in regards to upcoming systems, locations, things, but I want to try to keep this kind of more spoiler-free and more just predictions and personal opinions on what I think we'll see. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start with the new jobs. So personally, I think we're going to get two new jobs. I think with everything going on in the world, one job is actually probably something that we may even see, but I think they're going to stick with two, just because I think that they got to bring something new to the game, something to have people encouraged to play or be excited to play about. First job I'm going to go and talk about is today is going to be the healer. I think that's definitely guaranteed, especially with the uproar that we got last year, last expansion without no healers. The healers are very upset about that, so I do plan on seeing a healer, just to kind of the player base in that regards. The second one I'll just go and mention it now. I believe it'll be a caster. We'll talk about that here in just a few moments. Sorry, Blue Mage, you don't count. So speaking in regards to the healers, my personal opinion or my personal bet on what I think will be the healer of choice is going to be the chemist. And the way I think that that'll play is going to become more like a battle mage, potion maker, where they will use like the ninja's Murodra system to concoct potions in battle, or maybe even they can use something like the dancer system, where you have to key in a certain combination correctly in order to make that particular potion. As far as other things on top of that, I don't know what else that the job would actually have. Maybe DPS wise, you're gonna fling potions at the enemies, but at least the combination of making potions using either like a Mudra type system or a dancing like system, to me seems very interesting and unique. Also in 5.3 we kind of got a tease of a chemist in the storyline, so I'm going to take that with a grain of salt. I don't think personally that they're going to use that as our tease, but I just think that I'm really feeling really good opinions on the chemist. There's a lot of lore related things they could use in previous games. I think it'd be something very unique to the game. Another side thing I wanted to mention, another healer they could technically choose would be like an Oracle or maybe even a Green Mage, but me personally, I don't really think I want to put my chips in that pot yet, just because to me it sounds like a regular healer that we already have. I know they're going to be doing a lot of big balance changes to the healers in general, since the tanks were kind of the big focus in Shadowbringers. I think the next set of healers, or the next healer, will be something unique, something that will kind of be a lot different. Like, for example, if I was to maybe make an Oracle be super unique, maybe I would use something like the Disc Priest in WoW, where, yeah, you throw a shield on somebody, which we already have with the Scholar and the Astrologian, but instead of it just being a shield healer, it actually applies a shield, and then your damage heals that target. I don't know if the system would be able to, the current way the game plays, if the system would be able to allow that, but that to me would be very interesting as a concept. So fingers crossed, we'll see what happens, but my bet is going to be on the chemist. As for casters, as my second DPS job, I'm going to go with the Geomancer. I think that there's a lot of lore implications both inside the game as well as even previous, since 14 is kind of a clone replica of 11. Geomancer is an 11. I could easily see them porting in a lot of the stuff from the Geomancer from Final Fantasy 11 to 14. As I mentioned, it's already in the game, technically mentioned in both the Astro's story questline, as well as seen in some spells in the Swallow's Compass. So I can easily see us getting a Geomancer. Now, how would I want to see that played? I'm actually very impartial on that. As long as the rotation's good and it actually feels fine, I'm totally fine with it. Maybe it could be like a shorter range caster instead of it being like a max range that we have like 30 yalms. I would love to see maybe like where they have to be a little bit more kind of like on edge, a little bit closer in like with the melee, but not up to melee range. And maybe some of their spells, obviously a lot of it's going to be in regards to forming earth and whatnot. So I'll be interested to see where that goes. My personal preference though, I would love to see a Time Mage. A lot of the time magic has kind of been moved away from Astrologian, and I would love to see them kind of like, since they've been freeing that up, my my gut would be I'd love to see a time mage caster DPS in the game. I think it'd be really cool. Maybe you can do stuff like give out buffs that would increase like certain buff windows. So instead of your window being 30 seconds for all the DPS, maybe he has an ability where he increases that to like 45 seconds. That would be crazy in my opinion. The downside is there's not a lot of implications in the game that said that time magic is actually like good. It's usually kind of catastrophic or something bad with that magic. So usually they kind of shy away from anything that's like makes the warrior of light be using bad influences. But anyway, that's my fingers crossed on my personal one I would love to play as a caster main. But I think Geomancer would be probably the easier one to implement and actually do. Also, just as a side note, I also want to add a possibility of a limited job. Beastmaster well, Beast Tamer was dropped when Blue Mage was introduced back in the announcement for Shadowbringers, and it came in the patch before the actual Shadowbringers released. So maybe we may get a Beastmaster or Beast Tamer in 5.5. Maybe that'd be something that we will see as well. It really just is going to depend on how the devs feel about how Blue Mage is going. Personally, I've enjoyed the Blue Mage content. I think it's really fun, but I've done it more casually, as I'd rather see those type of jobs be full-fledged to use in any content, not just to repeat other older content as something on the side. So where I think it's good for majority of the player base, and I know they're trying to fulfill the job fantasy. I personally just wish that they would be main jobs. That's just me personally. But I could easily see them adding the Beastmaster to the game. It just really depends on how they feel the current Blue Mage is doing. They do have a new Blue Mage coming up this Tuesday, so I'm excited to play that. But we'll have to see where we go with the limited job system. So we're gonna switch gears now. We're gonna start kind of focusing on a little bit more of the current jobs we have and what I would like to see some of the changes made. So a lot of the current jobs, they kind of feel and play the same way. Over the course of expansions, this is drastically improved. We went from Heavensward, where everything was pretty much like maintain X buff, and that was it. Like there wasn't really anything special. But as the course of games came out, the jobs have slowly evolved into something more unique in themselves, and I definitely want to see them continue this particular path to more job identity and more individuality going forward. Currently, my big thing is the tanks. They feel, even though the balancing is very good for the tank system right now, they are very similar with some minor differences. I don't really like how each one basically has the same rotation, and then they have their burst window, and that's about it. Their main job technically is to focus on, staying alive, tanking the boss, moving them around, things of that nature. I get it, but I don't like how everything feels the same. So that's just me personally. I'd love to see the tanks get really adjusted in that regards. Melee DPS also kind of feel the same. Positionals are, whether you love or hate them, I think that's really good for the game. But again, also they all basically maintain a certain buff, and then that's about it. And they just have their burst windows. So I'd like to see those changes be down the road. Jobs getting buffed. So instead of I want to also add that I like the ninja and monk reworks that they add for their buff windows. So for perfect balance, instead of it having a certain time length to you have those abilities, you have just a number. I think that works great with how the game is played, especially with some of the server lag. Some people, it makes it really challenging to hit their burst windows in a certain time if you have like really bad ping or lag. So I think I want to see this implemented more in regards to other jobs. For example, all the tank burst windows, Requiesce, No Mercy, Blood Weapon, and a Release, every single one of them kind of act in the same way as Perfect Balance and the Ninja. I can't think of the buff right now, but they all act in the same manner. And I would love to see each one of those could easily have that. Even Machinist, Hypercharge, and maybe even Wildfire. Wildfire I kind of put a question by because it's a little bit different for that particular buff. But at least for Hypercharge, it acts in the same way. That makes it so you as a player, you don't feel pressured if you don't get the right amount of GCDs in that particular window. Or you have like just some bad server lag that causes you to miss it. So I can easily see them working on that. and implementing it on many other jobs. I can also see them, the charge system as well, implementing on that as well. Like Bloodletter for Bard is the first one that comes to mind that I think that they would like to implement. So I'm going to switch away from a lot of the other jobs. I'm going to start focusing on casters because I'm a caster main. If anybody's seen any of my previous content, you see I play Red Mage and Summoner quite a bit. So I do want to talk about those two jobs specifically and what I personally would like to see. Not that we may see them, but what I personally want to see. So Red Mage, I'm going to start with Embolden. Keep the buff as it is, but I strongly recommend they remove the degrading potency. It just feels bad. I hate when my windows for Embolden have to line up with, let's say, a trick attack, and I'm not in my big burst phase to do much of my damage. By the time I get there, it's already down to like 3 or 2, and now my attack just doesn't feel as strong. So instead of removing, or I want them to remove that degrading potency, but keep everything. I like how it buffs the melee attacks. It kind of gives it a unique caster thing away from a devotion that the summoners have. So I do like that part of it, but I just feel that the degrading potency part of it just feels really bad. Also, for just in general for other red mages, I want to see either another buff get added to the red mage or increase our damage. If the red mage's role is truly a supportive caster, then Embolden and Veraze is not enough to warrant our damage being lowered than the rest of the other casters in the game, in my personal opinion. Obviously, if we're going to add another caster, that's going to even more balance where we are currently at, and hopefully that'll maybe kind of help, but just in general, we're just talking about what it is now. Like, for example, the ranged physical roles is supportive in nature. It's built into their rotation of the job, and so they don't have to do anything. They just DPS, and that's basically what they are, what all the jobs are for DPS, is your main goal is to DPS. As a supportive red mage, yeah, I got Embolden, I just cast that whenever, but if I want to use Veraze, which is kind of considered the extra supportive part of it, I have to actually stop DPSing or throw it into my rotation just to res somebody on the fly. And while I don't believe, making Veraze be off the GCD or something to just be able to use whenever for free is a good thing, I don't agree with that at all. I like where it's at, and I think it should stay like that. I would just personally like to see, if we are truly the supportive red mage, the supportive caster, I would personally like to see just another buff, or maybe even 2. Like, for example, maybe add like a white mage like buff, since we already have Embolden that increases DPS. Maybe we have something like, I don't know, like the monks have with their healing recovery ability that I literally can't think of right now. Mantra. We have something similar, like, so then you don't have to personally bring a monk to be able to have that. You can have a caster that can fulfill that role too. I'm okay with a little bit of overlap like that. It doesn't bother me, but maybe they have something else different in mind. But that's just the first thing that came to my mind. All right, I know I'm going to probably get a lot of flack off of this, but Summoner rework. Again, every expansion it seems like we get a Summoner rework, but I currently feel that the current iteration of Summoner doesn't really fit the job. Or the fantasy of the job. This is, again, a personal opinion. There may be a lot of people that currently like where the current Summoner sits, and that's okay. This is just what I personally feel in regards to how the Summoner plays. I personally feel that it doesn't really feel like a pet class. It feels like I'm the Summoner and my pets are just there as flavor. They don't really do anything except for when I push a button. Most of the time, you literally just summon your regular Eggy, Ifrit, or Garuda, whichever content you're doing, because Titan, we all know, no one really uses it except for downtime. I tell him to go attack the target, and I basically forget about him. You just tell Ifrit to do Siegfried, or Garuda just use their AoEs, and then that's it for dungeons. There's not really any like consequence or use for them except for just to push a button on the GCD to either if you're in a movement or whatever the case may be. So they're kind of like use and forget type situations, and that's not really what I feel the Summoner should be. The Summoner should revolve around your pets as majority of your damage. I do like the moving in and out of like our big summons like Bahamut and Phoenix. The problem is they're short-lived. You're only in those windows for like 30 seconds, and after that it's like you got to rebuild back up. So you have this consistent like 2 minutes of I go into a phase, I go out of a phase, I go into a phase, I go out of a phase, and it just continues to repeat. And again, I love those main summon phases of Bahamut and Phoenix. but it's just too short. I would love to be in those phases way more than the other regular phases of maintaining my dots, casting Rune 3, etc. So the way I would want the job to be reworked is that the summoner would move away from dots, as a majority of its actions would be pet focused. This would obviously require a pet system rework, which I don't know if we're gonna get, but hey, maybe if we're gonna get the Beastmaster as a limited job, maybe they found a way of somehow to implement some of that over to the summoner? Question marks? Maybe? I don't know. That's just me personally. I would love them to get away from maintaining dots and just pressing Rune 3. Like, I feel like there should be like filler Rune 3s, but majority of your focus should be telling your pets what to do. You know, and then maybe they add another major summon. They've kind of done it every expansion since they've added Bahamut, so maybe Alexander would be the next big one that they would use. So for example, you wouldn't necessarily go through a clock rotation, right? In this way that I would see it, as you have 3 different buffs that you would use whenever you want, and you could choose when to use them, and they would just have like maybe like a 2-minute cooldown or something like that. So it's like if your group needs extra healing and maybe some AoE damage, you would summon Phoenix. Or you know you're about to hit a burst window and everybody's 2 minutes are about to come up, and you want to make sure you're a part of that damage, you bring up Bahamut as your big damage type person. And then maybe for Alexander, maybe he could be used more of like supportive too. Like maybe he's increasing like your buff timers. Like if, let's say, you have like something you want to extend, you can maybe bring him out and he extends something with like time magic or something like that. And maybe he has like some kind of shielding attacks that he does. And I kind of wrote down like some attacks that he may have. Like maybe he would cast Sacrament and Mega Holy, and then maybe his special active would be Divine Judgment or something like that. Like just something that we could use that I just threw on a sheet of paper just to see. But I'd like the ability to, instead of waiting every 2 minutes to choose in a certain rotation, instead of it being like a fixed rotation, it makes it where I can actually choose which one I want when I want them to be used, and I can kind of align them up. So kind of like the Bard's songs that they have, they can technically choose which one they start with. I think that'd be the same for the summoner. It'd be kind of use something like that, and you have 3 different ones to choose from and kind of go through that. That's just me personally. So TLDR on all that summoner rework. Make pets more part of the rotation and damage, with the summoner doing small amounts of DPS. Add another major summon with the option to choose when you would use the main summon instead of it being a fixed rotation. This would technically make the job probably more mobile, but hey, they could be the mobile caster, and the comparison on the other end of the spectrum, the Black Mage, which is the immobile caster. You'd be able to have that difference, right? That's just me personally. The big concern I do have with this particular job, if we were to go this route, is that the balancing sounds like a nightmare. But I have full confidence in Yoshi P and his team to be able to do something like this and make it work. I mean, I think they technically could borrow a lot of the stuff from the Bard and just kind of work it out to make it work, but you know, we'll see where they go. I do expect some kind of change to Summoner, because I don't think the current iteration does work. But this is just kind of my thoughts on how I feel it would work. So that being said, yeah, that's pretty much the end of the video. You know, we talked about a lot of different, you know, new jobs, current jobs, reworks, etc. We didn't even talk about some other potential new jobs that could come. You know, Rune Fencer. You know, they could definitely do a Rune Fencer as a melee DPS, or maybe they focus more on melee and then they jump back for some spells, like basically the reverse of a Red Mage. They could easily do that, and I would love that. It'd be great. I just don't think that they're going to add another melee DPS this time around. I think they're going to add a caster, just my opinion, and I think they're really going to work on job identity and balancing of the current jobs that we currently have. Speaking of other jobs that I left out that may have been thrown around the internet, the Thief, the Necromancer, and the Berserker from the Heroes Gauntlet bosses. I don't think that those are going to show in. They kind of show that those kind of jobs are a little bit more negative, and they want the Warrior of Light to, you know, be like a good person. Like, how can someone be a thief and be a Warrior of Light? It just kind of doesn't make sense. And I think a lot of the Rogue Ninja back in the in A Realm Reborn, when they added that, kind of, you know, they kind of have their sides where they were bad before, but now they're good. so it works there. But a thief, it's really hard. And then same with a necromancer, bringing the dead back to life. Yeah, that doesn't sound good at all. Same with the berserker, is just gone too far. So those are just that's my personal opinion on the ones in the Heroes Gauntlet. I was a big fan of those when they first came out, thinking that's what was going to happen, was one of those 3 would be in it. But after more thoughtful consideration, I just don't think they'll make it. So, but yeah, I plan on streaming the actual announcement on Friday. I'm gonna stream it just to have like a watch party and just kind of sit and enjoy and talk with you guys and see what you all think about what's coming up and see if we all get excited. It's gonna be a long night for sure. So I'll put my Twitch link in the description below. As always, you know, if you like this content, you know, like, favorite, subscribe. We appreciate anything that you could do in that regards. Appreciate the time watching, and I'm sure you guys will have plenty of things to discuss in the comments below. I'd love to hear your opinions on everything. But with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and head off. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.